and welcome back to the Four Substitute Podcast. Today we are making our 2022-2023 Premier League predictions, and it should be an exciting season. Joining me today is Ben, and he will be also providing his predictions on the year. So let's just get straight into it. We're going to start with 20th. For 20th for me, I'm going to personally have Bournemouth going back down to the championship. Bournemouth have not made many signings. I think they made one signing from Middlesbrough, and I don't think that's going to be enough to keep them up. So I think it's going to be a quick stay in the Premiership for them. Ben, who do you have?
Yeah, I also have Bournemouth. The reason being that I think this is a team that was trying to be patched together to do well enough in the championship to get back to the Premiership. A lot like Fulham, who we'll get to in a minute, but I believe that Bournemouth is going to be the least talented of the championship teams heading up.
Definitely agree on that. And that leads us to 19th, the second team to get relegated. And for that, I have Fulham. Fulham have made a lot of improvement signings pardon me, from this previous season in the championship. However, I do think they need another year down in the championship to develop these signings more. Then I believe they can stay up for multiple seasons the coming season after next year. And I believe with that, they'll finish 19th. Ben?
I also have Fulham. The reason being, like Bournemouth, they're a patchwork team in the Premier League where they'll go up, they'll go down, they'll go up. They have short cups of coffee in the Premier League pretty much every 1 to 2 years. A lot like Norwich, actually. They've been a lot like that. But Fulham, like you said, had some pretty good signings, but I don't think they're strong enough to compete with some of the other Premiership squads this year.
Definitely agree with that. Now moving on to 18th, the final relegation spot of the upcoming Premier League season. And for that, I have a surprise team going down. I have Everton joining the relegation zone. Everton have made signings this season. Don't get me wrong. However, these signings are almost championship quality, to put it into words. They signed 2 players from Burnley, the team that has just been recently relegated, and 2 players who have aided that relegation, including Dwight McNeil, who scored 0 goals last year. However, he did score 2 in a preseason friendly the other day. Yet I do think even Steven Gerrard, the manager of Everton, has said that they will be experiencing a tough relegation battle this year. Not something that you want to see going into the season. Therefore, I have them 18th. Ben?
I feel old. I saw Steven Gerrard actually play in person. That's shocking. I don't have Everton. First of all, Everton have never been relegated from the Premiership. They're, I think, only one of 7 teams, and that number may fluctuate or increase, that have never been relegated. They are one of them, just across the woods from Liverpool. I have Southampton. I think they're one of the weaker Southampton squads that we've seen. They've had a really good run from the championship. They've been up, probably over 10 years now.
They've been up for a decent, I think this is the longest stretch in recent memory that they've been up.
Yeah, they've had a good run. So has Swansea, so have Stoke, so have a lot of other teams, but they tend to burn out, and I believe Southampton is going to have that year this year.
Yes, and to correct you on that, there's 6 teams that have not been relegated. Obviously, Manchester United, Arsenal, Tottenham, Liverpool, Everton, and then lastly, Chelsea have not been relegated.
Aston Villa got relegated. That was the 7th.
That was the 7th, and they're no longer there. But now moving out to the, in my opinion, the edge that they could go relegated, but in my opinion, they're going to stay out, is going to be number 17, and that's going to be Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest has made plenty of signings this year. Some of them quality, some of them just death moves after they lost a decent amount of their squad last year. However, the pinnacle of that signing window was Jesse Lingard, who decided to go to Nottingham Forest over West Ham and others. Nottingham Forest is having an increased wage bill as a result, and I do think Jesse Lingard will be the main player to keep them up this year, and I think Nottingham Forest will stay in for at least this year. I think they'll maybe have a nice battle, like experience with Sheffield. I'm not comparing Sheffield and United. I think they stay up for a couple years, run up in the standings a little bit for 1 year, and then they'll fall back down. But yeah, that's why I have Nottingham 17th. Ben?
So I'm actually going to reverse it. So we had You had Everton at 18. I have Everton at 17. Again, I think they're going to stay up this year. I think the ownership group is going to fight to stay up. Again, they've never been relegated. And they do have a lot. They're a big, notable club. They will have money. I think they're going to try and scratch and claw and do whatever they can to stay up. But they're not as talented as some of these other teams. So I'm going to put them at 17.
I can see that. Now moving on to the 16th spot. 16th, I have Brentford. As I stated in my YouTube Shorts video, go check that out. Part 2 will be out soon. Brentford, I do think this will be a little downtick of season. Their main goal scorer, Ivan Toney, is possibly going to leave the squad this window. It hasn't been confirmed or denied, but I do think he might leave in the January transfer window to a team that needs a Premiership goal scorer. And that Brentford team was lifted up into the increased levels of the Premiership due to the signing of Christian Eriksen, who brought depth and skills to that team. However, I do think that the departure of Eriksen to Man United leads to a decrease in production from Brentford. Therefore, I have them at 16th. Ben?
So I also have Brentford at 16. I think they have a great ownership group. He's great. He's innovative. I think he's trying to take a different spin on things. I watched a TikTok on him. He's a really interesting guy if you get a chance to look more into him. Can't get his name right now. But I think they're another team that's going to scratch and claw. But I think they're a little bit more talented than Everton. Well, I would say 9 or 10 years ago, that would be an impossibility. But here's where we are right now, and I think Brentford they're gonna do what they need to do to comfortably stay up.
Alrighty, now moving on to 15th. In the 15th position, I have Leeds under new American manager Marsh. Marsh has made a lot of signings, mostly American signings from European clubs, and I think a couple from academies here in the United States. And I do think those new players will provide a boost to the club that finished 17th last year. So I do think Leeds will improve off of last season, but I don't think it's going to be a drastic improvement until those players become adjusted to the Premiership level of play that is needed to move up in the standings. Ben?
Well, Mitchell, there was breaking news the other day that I've become a Leeds United fan. I just bought my new jersey, so I'm happy to support Leeds United this year. The Americans, I don't have them at 15. I have Aston Villa at 15 actually. So I think Aston Villa will have a subpar season. I think they will struggle out of the gate, and then they'll try and get some wins and draws together to make sure they're not going down, make sure they're steady and comfortable. But I think this is going to be a little bit of an off year for them in terms of talent.
Yeah, I can see Aston Villa dropping. They're definitely a boom-bust team. However, I do not have them coming up in the next couple predictions, so that says something about that. But in 14th, I'm putting the team you put in 17th. I think Southampton will still stay up in 14th because of a couple of key signings they made. They signed a quality striker prospect from France. I forget his name off the top of my head, but he's from Bordeaux. I believe he'll provide a young kick to the squad like Broha did last year, the Chelsea loanee, who is now on the verge of moving to one of these new clubs. We don't know who it is yet. But I do think Southampton, they still have a majority of the squad there. James Ward-Prowse, still an amazing player in midfield. I mean, I'll be surprised if I see him moved in January. If the season's not going too well for Southampton, I can see them trying to sell and make profit before they are basically losing leverage by getting relegated. So I think because of that, they'll still say the 14th, but I can see them slipping down in the rankings if a couple things don't go their way. Ben?
So I have Leeds at 14. So you were close. To my ranking, but I put them one ahead of Aston Villa. I just think they're a little better talent-wise. They sold Rafinha this year, which was a little bit unfortunate, but you knew it was coming. He wanted to go. But they got two young Americans, two good young Americans. One being Tyler Adams, and then the Philadelphia Union Academy prospect just came from Red Bull Salzburg, Brendan Aronson. This kid is a stud. He's going to be a stud. Remember the name Brendan Aronson. He's been doing so well for the U.S. men's national team. He's super young. He's super pacey. I mean, he will go all over the field. He will run kilometers over kilometers. I think he had the most kilometers run in the Champions League this year. by one stat. So I think Brenden Aaronson is going to add a lot of energy to the squad. And then Jesse Marsch is a great manager. He managed, he was the gaffer of Red Bull Leipzig in the past, brought them to where they are today. I think Leeds I cannot talk. Leeds is not going to have a super successful season again because they need a lot more talent to break the top 10, but I think they're going to be comfortable this season. They'll be at 14.
Interesting decision. Now moving to 13th, I think I'm having a team that's going to be slowly being creased down towards relegation, and that team for me is Brighton. Brighton, that squad that was operated by Dan Ashworth, new sporting director of Newcastle United. They were able, with very little money, to get some quality players from the English academies to go and join Brighton to bring that team back up from the championship to a top half finish last year, might I add. They finished 9th. However, I do think this is the start of the end. They're losing a couple key players due to age, and more frankly, they're losing a lot of players to some of these big clubs, including Marco Cruciala, who is on the verge of joining Man City. Just clubs waiting on to agree to transfer terms. But Brighton is going to be losing some key players over the next couple of months, and I just don't think they're going to do as well as last year. I have them at 13th, and I could see them dropping even more over the next couple seasons. Ben?
All right, so at number 13, I'm going to put a little bit of a surprise. One of the championship teams tend to do really well in the Premiership season, while the other two get relegated. What is the one championship team I haven't said yet?
Oh, it's the Nottingham Forest. They've won more European titles than Man City, too.
Yes, so I think Nottingham Forest, with those key signings this year, that's going to boost them up a lot. I think they're going to add an extra spark to this Premiership, and I think they're going to make it out comfortably this season.
Oh, that's an interesting take. That's about the same. They were putting in where Brentford finished last year, including Aston Villa, who finished below them last year, which I still haven't gotten to Aston Villa yet. So now 12th. 12th, I'm going to go with a little bit of surprise, but also not really surprised because they finished the same place last year. I'm going with Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace has not really made any signings, and they also have not lost anybody. So I do think they're going to stand pat. Patrick Vieira is still a great manager for Crystal Palace and that team. However, I do think there's a stand pat with the quality they had last year. So I do think they'll finish 12th. Ben.
All right, so at my number 12 spot, let's get a looky here, because I have everything on my phone. I have Wolves. I think they're going to have an average season this year. I think they have a lot of talent. They have some really athletic players, but again, I think they haven't really made a huge splash. So I think that Wolves, again, is just going to have a nice, comfortable season.
All right, now to round out the bottom half. This is going to be a little change from my YouTube shorts, actually. I'm going to put in 11th Aston Villa. I had them originally at 10th, but I'm moving them down to 11th. Aston Villa, I think they're going to improve by 4 spaces from last year. They made a couple key signings, including Diego Carlos, who was a Newcastle target in the January transfer window. I do think he will still provide quality to the Aston Villa defense, and I do think under the second season of their new manager, I do think they move up to 11th. However, I do not think they break into top half. Ben?
So taking a look at the 21-22 table here, let me see. I think this team is going to be pretty much staying where they are, dropping a few spots. We're at number 11. I think it's going to be Leicester City. Again, I think they have a lot of talent. But I think there's just so many new, more athletic young Premier League teams this year. I mean, Jamie Vardy's getting older by the day. And I think that they're going to lose a little bit of energy, going late into the season. So I think they're going to drop 3 spots, but pretty much an average season for the Foxes.
Yeah, I originally had my team that is now in 10th, Leicester at 11th. That was mostly because of their squad getting older and the possibility of them getting rated by big clubs such as Fofana and Harrison and Barnes, who are all at the subject of discussions to Chelsea, Arsenal, and Newcastle in terms of transfer. However, the main reason I put them originally down at 11th was the loss of Kasper Schmeichel. He's now going to Nice, and I do think he was a key part to the Leicester squad. However, I do think they'll do 2 spots worse, but not by much. Ben?
So we go to number 10. I'm going to go with Crystal Palace. Again, I think a team that is pretty much mediocre every year. And I think, the teams from South London's just going to be like, all right, if we have a season as usual, we'll be okay. So I think they're content with staying there, and I think that's where they're going to stay.
Alrighty, now moving on to ninth. Ninth, I have moving up a spot up from last season. I have Wolves. Wolves have made their routine Portuguese signing of the transfer window. I don't remember his name, but I remember he can provide a nice spark to the Wolves offense, including Adama Traore, who has rejoined the squad off of his loan to Barcelona. So I do think Wolves improved by a spot from last year. Ben?
So now we go to number 9. I'm going to go with the Seagulls. I'm going to go with Brighton. Little bit of a jump this year. I think this is going to be the year where they really go out and prove that they can be a real Premier League contender. Well, not contender, but that they can hold their own. I think that they'll try to make a big push early in the season and then eventually start burning out. I think Brighton moving ahead a few spots is going to be the story for them this season.
Yeah, they finished ninth last year, and they finished higher than they ever had the year before. So they are on an upward trend, but let's see if they stay level or fall. Now, eighth, the final spot outside of European qualification. And there, I have Manchester United. I have a surprise move. A lot of things surrounding Manchester United is that Pogba left. They lost Jesse Lingard, and Ronaldo is trying to force a move out of the club because they are not in the Champions League. A lot of turmoil going on there, and I do think that eventually leads to them missing European football altogether. And Ben, what do you have at 8th?
That would be a good prediction for 7th, because I have Newcastle United at 8th.
Oh.
Listen, I did it just for you, Mitchell. Just for you.
Really? Me?
Really?
Oh.
Yes, good for you. Now, all jokes aside, I think Newcastle avoiding relegation last year and then getting a new ownership group was huge for them. However, they've made a lot of good signings. They're on the verge of Werner, I heard. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I don't think they're ready for Europe just yet. One more season. You just got to wait one more season. Our sophomore year, we'll be watching Newcastle in Europe, but I think they'll be number 8.
Oh. Now that leads me to my 7th pick, and
is
boy.
it Newcastle?
Yeah, Newcastle.
Yeah.
So Newcastle, I do think they have not done enough to go to the Europa League or Champions League. I do think that's way out of the window. I do think, however, they can make a push for all Europe, English Cup challenges, such as the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. I do believe they can do that. However, I do think they can sneak in through the Europa Conference League. And that is because, as you said, they have a couple on the verge of signings. There's Timo Werner, who's apparently in advanced discussions with the club. We're apparently in talks with Leicester about James Maddison, who is also a class center attacking midfielder. And we're also looking for that young striker to eventually take over. And I do think these signings... Oh, I forgot one. Maxwell Cornet from Burnley, who could be a huge addition to our club as a rotational piece or even a starter. It's amazing what Eddie Howe can do. He's a fantastic manager. What he did with the club last year was millions of years ahead of what Steve Bruce had. And I do think they pushed to get 7th this year. And it's just mostly because of all the signings they had. And including this preseason, they have beaten 2 Champions League qualifying teams and barely missed out on a 3rd Champions League team win in this preseason, but due to a poor refereeing game, unfortunately that did not turn out to play. But Ben, who do you have in 7th? I'm interested.
Number 7?
Yeah.
I think I gave you a hint.
Oh, is this who I think it is?
I think it is. I think they're going to be in shambles, but not in shambles enough for Newcastle to overtake them. Listen, they've got money. They've got money. Manchester United has money. So does Newcastle. But Manchester United has the name. And I think they're going to go out, and I think they're going to sign people in the winter transfer market to really try to make a push toward Europe.
Fair enough.
I don't think it's going to be enough to make the championship. I think there are teams that are ahead of them. And I think they're going to be content with 7th.
Alrighty. Now moving on to my 6th, and then now we're entering the Europa League spots. I'm going with the team that finished second place in the Europa League last year, and that's going to be West Ham. West Ham has finally made a striker signing for the first time in over 1,300 days with the signing of the Italian striker. I can't pronounce his name or sound very bad, but they have improved the squad greatly this year, and I do think that will lead to them staying constant in that top 6 role, but I can see them pushing up for Champions League, but I do think they'll stick with Europa this coming season. Ben, who do you have at 6?
I also have the Hammers, believe it or not. Listen, West Ham has become so talented. I mean, I watched them as they came from a championship team with like 10 years out of the Premiership to becoming a powerhouse again. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the big, powerful teams with a ton of money that I'm going to name in the next 5 are going to push even harder. They're going to get talent. They're going to do the stuff they usually do. And I think West Ham is going to be just left out of that.
Interesting decision. Now we're moving on to number 5, the final spot before Europa. And it's not the team that usually we make fun of for finishing 5th every year. Instead, I have Chelsea. I have Chelsea finishing 5th this year just because of another team that made enough signings, in my opinion, to make itself Champions League quality. Chelsea has made fantastic signings in their back 4, a couple of new midfield additions, but yet I just don't think they can keep that level enough that they had last year to finish 3rd. And I do think a couple teams ahead of them got better than what they were currently, so I do think they are the one to fall out of Champions League. Ben?
So I guess I had a little bit of bias. I used to be a Chelsea fan, so I do have them in the championship. At number 5, I have the Gunners. I have Arsenal. I think they're gonna have. I mean, they had some poor seasons in the past, and I think they're trying to adjust to see who they are as a team. Sakho's a freaking stud. So if he pops off, I think they definitely have a chance for the Champions League. But I think the Gunners are way behind some of the teams that I think will be in the championship this year.
Alrighty, now we're moving on to the final 4. And starting with number 4, I have Arsenal finally getting that Champions League spot. And it's because of one signing who is outstanding so far this preseason for the Gunners. I mean, not the Gunners. Yeah, it is the Gunners. Is Gabriel Jesus, the Man City striker god. I think he's going to do perfect for Arsenal, and he's amazing so far. He's destroyed Chelsea by scoring 3 goals against them in a preseason friendly at both full scar. I know. But I do think Arsenal, just because of that key signing, I do think he provides a spark to the squad, and I think they finally get Champions League. Ben?
At number 4, I have Spurs. I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna get the Champions League spot. I mean, Harry Kane's an absolute stud. They have so much talent around them. I don't see them not getting into Champions League this year. And I think, as much as I hate them, we all hate Tottenham. You know, the Arsenal champ. I think they're good enough to get that 4th spot in Champions League.
Yeah. Now here comes the fun part. Now we're getting into the top 3. And 3, I have Spurs. I think they'll improve off of last season and gain a spot, mostly because of a couple signings they made this summer. They've signed Perisic from Inter Milan. They signed Forrester, the goalkeeper from Southampton. They signed Bissouma from Brighton. They signed Richarlison from Everton. Lenglet from Barcelona, and Spence from Middlesbrough, who are all amazing players. I do think that adds on to the goal-scoring quality reigning Golden Boots winger Son has had last season, along with Harry Kane. I think all of those signings together combines for an improvement of 1 spot this year for Spurs. Ben?
I think Chelsea's near your number 3 spot. 1 could be a little bit of bias, but 2, the signing of Raheem Sterling does help them a lot. The Chelsea squad is a super strong team all around. Your only question mark is probably that striker position where you were hoping to get Lewandowski, but otherwise you have an absolute machine of a team. I have them at number 3.
And it also sucks that Barcelona has almost all of Chelsea's transfer targets for this window on their team now. But whether or not they can actually use them is up to the financial fair play of the La Liga. Now, number 2, it's either Liverpool or Man City for both of us. Personally, I have Liverpool finishing 2nd. I do think Man City has better signings, But for 2, I think Liverpool signed Darwin Núñez. I think he's a little mixed bag of emotions for me. I do think he won't flop necessarily, but I don't think he's going to be that Erling Haaland type signing. So I do think Liverpool is going to finish second for the second year of the row, but it's going to be close, coming down to the last day once again. Ben?
I just think Man City is better talent, to be completely honest. They have studs across the board, so I'm going to go Liverpool number 2, and then your defending champions, unfortunately, will be Manchester City.
Yeah, we'll get what you picked, Man City, but obviously, number 1 for me, winning the not the Champions League. I mean, maybe, but they somehow can't do that out of everything. But winning the Premier League for me this year is Man City. They have made so many quality signings. Calvin Phillips, Erling Haaland among most, and Alvarez, who could be the future striker for the team. Man City just always makes so many good signings. I wish Newcastle can be them one day, but right now, Man City stays on top of the Premier League for another year. Ben, what's the reason?
The league has become so unfair now. It's become like a Barcelona, Real Madrid, La Liga type league where Man City and Liverpool run the whole show. And to be completely honest, Man City has a lot more, not a lot more talent, but considerably more talent in my books than Liverpool. So they'll win the league for years to come.
And before we let you guys go, we're going to have 2 extra predictions just to throw them out there. We're also going to say who do you think will win the Carabao Cup and who will win the FA Cup. So obviously last year Liverpool won both, but couldn't get the last one, which was Champions League, as they unfortunately lost Real Madrid in the final. So personally for me, I do think in the Carabao Cup, I do think it's going to be Liverpool again. However, in the FA Cup, I do think Man City wins the pinnacle of English football. Ben, who do you think?
You know what? I believe in the Carabao Cup, a lot of these top teams are going to really be focusing on their seasons and trying to get to Champions League. I'm gonna throw in a stunner here. I think Newcastle United is going to win the Carabao Cup.
I could have been biased. I was thinking about it, but I still think we are 1 year away at least from making far pushes into this.
I think you can make that push. I think a lot of these teams are going to sit their starters early on. Some may get knocked out. And I think Newcastle's looking for that trophy to make a statement. I think Newcastle, it could be the team to do it this year. I mean, Wigan almost did it against Manchester City. There have been other teams that have pushed for it. Hull City actually almost pushed for it against Arsenal. I believe Newcastle will definitely make the final, if not win the whole thing.
All right, then who do you think wins the FA Cup? The spot of which you can gain a Europa League spot from, what Wigan, I think, did at one point.
Well, Manchester City won, but they already made Champions League, so they got the Europa League spot because of that. No, I think Tottenham Hotspur will win.
Tottenham, all right.
I think they're going to be pushing for that trophy this year.
Well, on that note, we'll come check in with you guys for the January transfer window as we make an update or just check in on our predictions when we come to that point. Once again, thank you for joining us here on the Four Substitute Podcast. I'm Mitchell, that's Ben, and we'll see you guys in January.